It's the return of Sunbelt Billy, and he's reflecting on his time when he was in Cajun country. We'll talk about it here on Ragin Rundown. What's good, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into another episode of Ragin Rundown. All Cajuns, all the time. I'm your guy, Jamarcus Fitzpatrick, but you know you can always call me Fitz. And in today's episode, we are in New Orleans for Sunbelt Football Media Days, the first of a two-day event here on Wednesday, July the 15th. Tomorrow, on the 16th, the Ragin Cajuns will take center stage. They'll actually take the main stage first, but we as the working media have different one-on-one slots. We'll get a chance to talk with head coach Michael Desimo, Lunch Winfield, and also George Jackson. So that'll be fun. But in today's episode, we will be discussing a little bit about a blast from the past. Former Ragin Cajuns head football coach Billy Napier. For those of you that for some reason, as a Cajuns fan, don't know who's the coach before Michael Desimo, or maybe you're a new fan under the Desimo era. Before Mike Desimo was promoted in 2021, at the end of the 2021 season, the coach before him was Billy Napier. He spent time at UL from 2018 to 2021. In those 4 seasons at Louisiana, he compiled a 40-12 record. He went 7-7 his first year, 11-3, 10-1, 12-1, and then won the Sunbelt Championship in that 2021 season, the first in program history. And then the New Orleans Bowl at the end of the season was actually the first game that head coach Mike Desimo led the Ragin Cajuns in as the official head coach of the program. Leading into his time there at UL, he had been an OC at Arizona State and Clemson, and also had worked as a receivers coach at Alabama. So he was under the Saban tree. So at the time, that was a slam dunk hire for them to add to their program. So because, it's a 2-day event, I decided, how can we localize this? How can we make this something that has a connection? And, ultimately it pointed back to him, because after he left UL, we all know how it went. He went to Florida. He spent 3.5 seasons there. He was fired in the 4th season after 7 games. And after being fired, he became the primary target for James Madison once Bob Chesney made it clear that he was going to UCLA. After they won the Sun Belt, made it to the college football playoff, he went to UCLA. Billy Napier becomes the coach, so he re-enters the Sun Belt Conference. And I had a conversation with him one-on-one. It was about a 10, 11-minute conversation, and I'll link that down in the description of this episode. But I have 4 cut-ups that I want to discuss. The first one is kind of an obvious one, which is, what went wrong at Florida? You get there and you have a lot more resources than what you had in your previous stop, and that's not a knock to UL. It's just, it is what it is. And I wanted to know, we've heard a lot from other outlets what it could potentially be, but I wanted to hear it from the man himself. So I asked Coach Napier, what was it outside of just not winning games? What was it that kept him from staying at Florida and ultimately them not being able to achieve their goal?
I have to do better. I think ultimately it's the head coach's responsibility. Every part of the organization. So as a leader, there were parts of our systems and process that we weren't good enough. So I think you regroup, you learn quite a bit. The key is to take that failure and try to use that. I think it's helped me kind of reframe my priorities a little bit. But we're better because we had that experience. And I do think we left it in a better place. I think most of our, my fellow coaches out there would say that. So we were close, but that doesn't count, So I think we get a chance to reboot the computer here, go back and attack this thing at JMU, and I'm really excited about that.
Close doesn't count is that's tough, but ultimately things did not work for him at Florida. And like I said, after being fired, after what was his final record leaving there, he finished 22-23 at Florida, 6-7 season, 5-7, and then 8-5 and 3-4 in his final campaign, 12-16 there in the SEC. After that, he was given a second opportunity to become a head coach, So he goes from UL to Florida to now James Madison, becoming a primary target after Bob Chesney did well for the Dukes. We've seen what James Madison has done, and I know obviously this is a Raging Cajun show, and we're going to get into that in a second. What Coach Napier had to say about UL, but ultimately we've seen James Madison be at the pinnacle of this conference. They've won the Sun Belt. Since they've come in, they've won the Sun Belt. Kirk Cignetti came in and did a phenomenal job. He got the job at Indiana, wins a national championship. Bob Chesney comes in and wins the Sun Belt. They go on to reach the college football playoff, ultimately losing, but then he gets the UCLA job. So it's been a hotbed for coaches. And so I asked Coach Napier, what was it that truly drew him to James Madison and ultimately came to fruition for him wanting to take this job?
Well, I think big thing is the alignment that we have with our administration. We have great leadership, President Jim Smith, and then obviously our AD, Matt Rohn, is a rising superstar in the profession. So my conversations with them, I talked to a lot of the coaches that had worked at James Madison in the past and some of the coaches that competed against JMU. So my kids are 14, going to be 12, 10 this fall. And then I couldn't imagine being away from the game, right? So I love building teams, and it just was a fit. A lot of discernment went into that, a lot of prayer. But it has blown me away 6 months into it. I've just been really impressed with the place.
So you could really see there that Coach Napier is excited to be able to take over the Dukes program, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. The Sun Belt coaches poll also came out, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But before we talk about that, Coach Napier and I discussed his old stomping ground, his first love, his first opportunity to be a head football coach at the collegiate level, and it was a very telling conversation because he had nothing but positive things to say. It was a very good bit of answers that he gave to the questions that I gave him. And I have two cut-ups that I want to play for you. I'm going to do that when we come back here on Ragin Rundown. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Ragin Rundown. We're going to get back into the action in just a second. But before we do, if you are watching this on YouTube, please do me a favor. Please like this video, share it, and leave a comment down below. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on podcast, please follow the podcast feed, rate the show, and leave us a review because that's going to help us get in front of more Ragin Cajun fans just like yourself. So the moment that a lot of you have probably been waiting for, you may have even skipped a lot of the first half of the episode to get to this point. What was Coach Napier saying about the Ragin Cajuns? Like I said, he spent 4 seasons there, and he had high praise for not just the way things were run in the organization, but the community and how he felt about the people and how they helped him to gain, a little bit of moxie and a good feeling about himself as a head coach to give him confidence before he headed to Florida. And so I asked him how he felt about UL since he had left and how he had felt they had been doing from the outside looking in.
Well, I think I just gained a lot of confidence in our system, in our processes. Met a lot of great people. I think you learn you're only as good as the people you have around you. We had it all. We had president, AD. We had people behind the scenes supporting the program. We had phenomenal assistant coaches. The entire organization from top to bottom was rolling. And we had a lot of good young people that you look around at where those guys are at these days. There's a lot of talented people in that building. So our players were phenomenal. So for me, that culture that we built there, we're searching to do that again. I thought we were close at Florida, came up a little short, and now we get to start over and try to do it again. So I'm looking forward to that challenge for sure.
A lot of good feelings there, talking about how he felt about the program once he left it. I only got an opportunity to cover Coach Napier for 1 season, and it was kind of a weird time because we were coming out of COVID. So all of the Zoom interviews or all the interviews we were doing post-game during the week and all that were over Zoom. And we didn't start doing in-person interviews, I think, until like week 8 or so. So I didn't get an opportunity to feel just as much of, what he was like in person. But from a cultural standpoint, we saw what that team looked like in 2021. The Levi Lewises, the Montrell Johnsons, the Imani Baileys, the Lorenzo McCaskells, the Zion Hills, Eric Guerra, Trey Amos, who would eventually move on and is now in the NFL. Like they had a ton of talent around that program. And I think some of that residue that he built here is still there on this team. We talked about it ad nauseum. The roster that you have currently: Lunch Winfield at quarterback, Sheldon Sampson at wide receiver, Brent Gordon Jr., who is a superstar cornerback. You have a ton of that still in this program. It's just in a different age. You factor in NIL, you factor in rev share, you factor in the transfer portal. It's a little bit different how things are looking, but I think what Coach Napier did, he basically handed the keys to Coach Dez. But then after that, they changed the rules of the road, the way that you have to drive. And so Coach Dez has been put in a position where that first season obviously wasn't good, 6-7, and they were trying to work through some things. 2023 was once again a 6-7 season, but you had quarterbacks to go down. Zion Chris came in, was your starting quarterback at one point, and you willed your way to do it. 2024 was the Sun Belt Championship season. They get there, they go 10-2. They had a ton of experience, but again, the injury bug bites you once again. Last season, the injury bug once again biting you, and you fall in 6-7. And I know that a lot of that doesn't matter. That is a factor in there, and I know it may sound a lot like excuses, but it just is what it is. So now the expectation coming in is to have some of this experience that you have coming back, offensive pieces, and then on the defensive side of the ball, and being able to try to build off of that, and ultimately do what you want to do, which is to win a Sun Belt championship and try to find a spot there in the college football playoff and compete on one of the biggest stages in all of the sport. The final thing that me and Coach Napier talked about that I want to play for you was how he felt about Coach Dez. Before Coach Napier got there, Coach Dez was on the previous staff under Mark Hudspeth. Before that, he was coaching at the high school level, Ascension Episcopal, Catholic of New Iberia, and all of those things like that. So when the transition happened, Coach Napier kept him on the staff. He eventually became the tight ends coach, co-offensive coordinator, and all of those great things like that, getting him an opportunity to be able to game plan, call plays, help to establish the play calling and all of those things like that. And that's ultimately why I think he was named the guy, outside of also him being a UL alum, him being from New Iberia, being about as local and as Cajun as you can possibly be. And so I asked Coach Napier about Coach Dez and what he thought he has become as a head coach. And here's what he had to say.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's one of the young superstars in our profession. He just happens to be a Cajun, and be from the hometown and be a former legend there as a player. So, they've done a nice job with the high school evaluations and recruitment, and I think that he's got to continue to fight to retain players. The community has got to step up and support him in that regard. They know what to do. He's a great coach, and they've got a good staff. So they're going to have a good team this year. They're one of the sleepers in this league, in my opinion. And you watch their tape from last year; they're close. So. This quarterback they have coming back is a problem, and I think they've played really good defense. So they're going to be tough to deal with, and I'm excited to see how they compete this year.
Excited to see how they compete this year, and you heard him there in that bite, giving kudos to Lunch Winfield, that he's going to be a problem. We saw what he did in the Marshall game, rallying the team back to ultimately getting an overtime victory. And I think the conference notices that, I think that, again, if he is able to stay healthy, the sky is the limit, not just for this team offensively, but for this team as a whole towards the goals that they want to reach. Coach Dez, again, has been put in an interesting situation because he takes over, and the landscape that it was for Coach Napier is not the same that it is for him. That is, again, not an excuse. That is just is what it is. I think that now, as they enter this season, all of the expectations are there for the taking. And it's going to be about how well can the players execute? How well can coaches scheme to put these players in the best position? And ultimately, how do they win one score and close games? Because, like Coach Napier had kind of alluded to in that soundbite, they were close. And the difference may have been players not executing a play, a scheme, or a situation where the team is simply outcoached. We don't know, because we're on the other side of things, always what it is that could be the reason why things don't pan out. But with the amount of talent that you have bringing back and some of the experience that you have across the board as a team, I think that a lot of that not knowing and not having not having execution, a lot of that has to go away, because you have guys that have been on in the program, they've experienced what it's like to play in the Sun Belt. So the room for error is a lot smaller now, because it's not like, oh, you're a true freshman, oh, you've never played before. You've been rotating, or you've been a starter, or you've played multiple games, multiple seasons. Now it's about going out and proving that. The last thing that I want to get into, the Sun Belt Coaches Poll. I told you, we talked about in the previous episode. Phil Steele put out his poll, but the Sun Belt Coaches Poll came out a few days ago, and Louisiana was picked to finish second in the Sun Belt West. So Phil Steele picks the Cajuns to win the West, and the Sun Belt Coaches Poll has Louisiana picked to finish second in the West. Again, here's how the polling is looking. It is Troy first, Louisiana, Arkansas State, Louisiana Tech, Southern Miss, South Alabama, and ULM. Now, in terms of first place votes, Troy got 12 and Louisiana got 1. So I'm about as sure as I can be that that one very well is Mike Desimo, fully believing that his team is going to be able to get the job done. And that's what a coach is supposed to do. He's supposed to believe in his team, and he's supposed to invoke confidence in them. And then as he pumps them up, it's their job to then go out and back him up with their game. On the Sun Belt all preseason honors team, Sheldon Sampson, again, is first team all Sun Belt. Brent Gordon, again, is first team all Sun Belt. No surprises there. We've talked about it multiple times. There's no need to go over that again. Second team, Caden Morrow on the offensive line, Fitzgerald West on the defensive line. So you have some guys there that are experienced and that have a lot of star power to them as they enter the season. Things are only going to continue to heat up as we get closer to September, when Louisiana will open the 2026 campaign against Lamar. So that's going to be fun. Also, Coach Napier was jokingly saying, I asked in my final question to him, I don't have that cut up for you guys, but in my final question to him, I jokingly asked him, is he rooting for a Cajuns Dukes Sun Belt championship game? And, he said that there have been a lot of group text conversations about that. And, he's hoping that it will happen, because it'll make him extremely happy to see kind of the fruits of his labor, that he, planted a seed in one place, and now what he could be establishing here in another place. So we'll see how it pans out. James Madison was picked to win the East in Phil Steele's poll, and also in the Sun Belt Coaches Poll. So a lot of expectations for Coach Napier. Great guy, great conversation with him. Like I said, you can check out that full interview. I'll have it linked down in the comments. It's on ketc.com and my day job. And so you can go and check that out there. So that's going to wrap up this episode of Ragin Rundown. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much. Please do me a favor. Please like it, share it, and leave a comment down below. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're listening, please follow the podcast feed, rate the show, and leave us a review, because that's going to help us get in front of more Ragin Cajun fans just like yourself. I'm your guy, Jamarcus Fitzpatrick. We'll see you guys next time.